Hi, and welcome back to Making Sense, brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. I'm your host, Thomas Racca, and on this podcast, we tackle the money questions you're actually asking, from first paychecks to long-term plans, with practical guidance that you can use this week. Starting life as an adult is exciting, but it comes with a lot of new financial responsibilities. So whether you're heading off to college or starting your first job, today's episode is all about building habits that actually stick, so the money side of growing up feels a lot less overwhelming. To help bring a real young adult perspective to the conversation, I'm joined by Ashley Colatarci, our corporate communications intern. Ashley is usually behind the scenes helping making this podcast possible, so it's great to flip the mic and the camera her way. Ashley, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Thomas. I'm glad to be on the other side this time. I'm excited to, talk about habits that actually feel doable for people my age.
That's awesome. Look, before we get into anything in too much detail, I'd love for the audience to get a chance to know you.
Gosh, okay. I was born in New Jersey. And, I once heard someone say Jersey's biggest export is college students, and I'm living proof of that. I'm currently studying journalism and mass communication at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And as for Navy Federal, my family has had a very long military history. And in fact, if you trace it back, there are only 2 American wars that nobody in my family has fought in. And even fun fact, after World War II, my great-grandpa Mario started a credit union of his own for the local firefighters in his town in New Jersey. So I guess that's my why Navy Fed.
Ashley, what a cool legacy and a great reminder that so many of our members, Navy Federal isn't just a financial institution, but it really is tied to family and military service. Really appreciate you sharing that. So let's start out. First real question. Financial confidence. So often it comes down to the right habits, not just the right numbers. You are living the starting out stage in real time. We're watching it in front of us. Can you share why building good habits early matters to you, and maybe share a story or two where something really hit close to home for you?
Definitely. So as a little background, when I was a kid, my parents, the way they taught me the value of $1 was every time the tooth fairy would come, I would get $1 put under my pillow. So the equivalency would be 1 tooth equals $1. It sounds creepy, but I remember my mom was in a store with me and I pointed at this doll and I said, "Mom, I want this." And she was like, "Well, Ashley, it's $16. So that means 16 teeth. Do you have 16 teeth to give up for this?" And I was like, "No, I definitely don't." So yeah, I thought about that for a while, 1 tooth equals $1. And then things started getting a little more expensive and, it would be top would be 50 teeth. And I'm like, I don't have 50 teeth. But recently I actually started budgeting for the first time, which has been big. And, throughout the entire process, I kept thinking like the value of $1 is 1 tooth.
I love that. When my son started working, he was flipping burgers, and I was talking to him one day, and I said, "Well, how many burgers do you flip in an hour?" And it'd be 20, 30, whatever it was. And we had that same discussion in our house. So when he would ask for something, I said, "Well, okay, well, how many burgers is that?" Instead of how many hours do you have to work, we tried to put it in a really concrete example. So sounds like your parents knew exactly what they were doing.
To an extent.
To an extent.
Yeah.
I love that. So for the people that are in your orbit today, Ashley, classmates, coworkers, but folks who are really just starting out, I'm curious, what does that managing money really look like? And what parts are easy? And are any parts still confusing?
Honestly, the easy part is the stuff that's already automated, like direct deposit or, auto pay on my phone bill. But the confusing part is everything that's in between, like rent, groceries, gas, especially gas right now, and all those random subscriptions that you forget about. Like I forgot about my Plus subscription for 3 months. It was $10, $30 for that. Yes.
Right out the door.
Yeah. But, it's less about not knowing what to do and more about kind of not having a system.
Sure. I'll tell you, it's such a common thing today when the subscription model is so prevalent for everything. And that's how it's designed. You're not supposed to notice the $10 coming out of your account, but we tell people all the time, $10 here, $10 there. And eventually it starts to really add up. And it's a really common experience. And I can't make this point enough. Do not make perfection the enemy of good, right? It's really about having a simple plan that you can stick to.
Exactly. And clarity matters more than the complexity of the spreadsheet.
Big time. And look, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stump for our Navy Federal monthly spending calculator. We'll put that link in the show notes, but really it's whatever tool is going to work for you. There's a lot of free tools available. There's old-fashioned pen and paper, more for my generation than for yours. You could make an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, there's any number of ways to accomplish it, but having eyes on your money is big time. Let me pivot here just a little. Another big thing is social media, right? And there's this concept of, as you're starting out, you're seeing what your friends are doing online. I'm curious, what's something that you've noticed maybe in that space, and how does that come up in conversation?
So that's actually a really good question. A lot of the kids at my school have a lot of money. Their parents have a lot of money. I see this one guy, and then the next week he's at in Santorini in Greece. There are so many kids like that. But yeah, people are just always flaunting. And it is very hard to remember that not everything you see is real, and that a lot of the time it's not money that is made by these kids.
Sure. You got to remember, people rarely actually put their struggles out on the socials, and they do things for the clicks, for the likes, right?
Yeah.
You never know what's going on in someone's life. With that, when you look at your peers, I'm curious, what is a habit that you see making a long-term difference?
Definitely, it would have to be checking your accounts regularly, which is something I didn't do for a very long time because I was like, oh, this is fine. I know what I'm spending my money on. I understand online purchases I'm making and everything along those lines. But there was one time where I decided to check randomly because my card declined at the grocery store. So I went on my phone right away and I saw that there were about $200 in the past 2 months spent on online merchants, and I immediately started panicking. I was like, oh my gosh, I called my bank. I immediately closed my card. And then I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, someone spent $200 on my account. Was that you? And he said, no, you need to make sure that you get your account closed right away. And then my dad asked my mom. Turns out my mom had accidentally been using my card because all of our cards looked the same. And I had put my card into hers so that I could order something on her account. And so I was out $200 because my mom decided she wanted to buy, just the regular stuff. She just didn't double check. But if I had never checked and seen that, I always think, if it wasn't my mom, what happens if it wasn't anybody I knew? What if it was just a complete stranger online? And that scared me into checking my accounts a lot more frequently.
I have heard so many stories where it's the kid actually having the parents' card default. That's the first time I've heard it going this way. So you get points for originality on the story. And I love how it keeps coming back to consistency and awareness. It's those small things that are done, and you hope over time they lead to financial success. You made a really good point, kind of talking about the money going out. We talked about the subscription model a little bit, but another big stress point that we hear about from young adults is fees. It could be overdrafts. It could be running short of money between paychecks. From your perspective, what do your peers do when the money actually feels tight? And what do you think can help to actually cure it as opposed to just piling on the anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people cut out subscriptions from personal experience. I know that one of the first things I do is cut out subscriptions. And then the next thing I do is cut down on my weekly spending. Then I'll start going to the grocery store more instead of going out to eat as much. But the biggest helper that I've seen is just knowing what's coming in and out of your account, checking it regularly instead of avoiding it, which I am a victim of. I have gotten so much anxiety from checking my accounts. But, setting up alerts helps a lot too, because you're not really relying on a memory. I have those set up on my phone. I have the Navy Federal one set up. And the thing that, adds anxiety is the opposite, like I said, not looking and then being surprised when $200 is out of your account because your mom spent it on.
One of my favorite sayings, and I credit an previous executive vice president, but one of his favorite mantras was, if you get a smoke detector, you won't need a fire alarm. And I can tell you so often people want to just pretend the debt isn't racking up or hope the money's in the account, and one thing leads to another, and that's how you lead to one bad financial decision after another, right? And I see folks get stuck in payday loans. I see people leveraging buy now, pay later. And when it's not being used strategically at any age range, and I think it's even harder for young adults, but at any age range, it can cascade really quickly. So I like that you're calling attention to the awareness. And you make a good point about the automation. Like, we seem to hear that more and more in discussion about financial readiness. When you and your friends talk about money, is this something that comes up? Is it something that people actually talk about, or do you and your peers find it intimidating?
Well, the only kind of automation that I know I've talked about with my friends in depth is those subscriptions, because if the world is ending, you will still get a subscription notice. You will still have that money taken out of your bank account. But I mean, I found out yesterday when I was talking to a financial advisor that you pointed the direction to. He was telling me that you can automate it for pretty much anything. So growing up, my dad would take a certain amount of each of my paychecks and put it in my savings so that I could have it later on and that it would grow. But I will not always have my dad there to automate that for me, because it's not even automated for him. It's just when he remembers. But, it's definitely intimidating until you try it once. The first time you set up like an automatic transfer, even if it's $5 a week, it kind of just clicks. You stop thinking of savings, as something you have to remember to do.
Yeah, so many people today, the numbers are really staggering. I think the last article I read said something like 60% of Americans across all age brackets couldn't cover a $400 or $500 emergency.
Yeah.
And you and I had a conversation just a few days ago about, what to do with money. What do I do when I have a few bucks saved up?
Mm-hmm.
And not only are you a step ahead of the game if you have a couple bucks in a savings account, but you start to see what smart decisions in your age bracket can look like. When you see what it looks like with compound interest, building up your retirement account, or how compound interest goes towards loan and credit card debt, and it can really start to pile up. A lot of listeners your age are trying to juggle immediate needs. I mean, life necessities, rent, groceries, and spending on the social life gets in the way of some of those long-term goals, right? You start talking about saving for a car, moving, or even that elusive retirement goal. That's way in the future, but you'll be there before you know it. How do you and your peers balance that? Does long-term even feel real to you?
I mean, long-term definitely does feel real. It just feels like it's decades away. What actually a lot of people I've known have started doing, because DC is incredibly pricey. DC is so expensive. You'll spend $20 on a drink on top of a $40 meal. And actually just yesterday, I had a friend send me, a little video of somebody talking about how you don't have to go out in order to have a fun time with your friends. And if you want to have a social life, you can do that at home. It's not, it's not something that you need to go to this fancy, expensive cocktail bar to have a vibe and get all these cute Instagram pictures and show everybody where you are. But, feeling like long-term goals are far away is definitely the trap. What's helped me is breaking my goals down into timelines. What's for this month? What's for this year? And what's for someday? That way, the long term isn't just one big blurry mess that you can't see.
What does that someday look like to you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of whatever I set. Usually when I have a long-term goal, I'll set a specific year or a month that I want to reach that goal by. So then I can think, oh, okay, it's 365 days away, but that's only 12 months. But that's only 4 quarters. That's only, I break it down more and more. So then I realize, okay, it's coming up a lot sooner than I thought so.
Sure. You made a really good point there a second ago. You're talking about trying to capture a vibe, right? And going out, and so many people, age aside, there are lots of folks in your age bracket that have kids. There are lots, plural, singular, plural, whatever it may be. And I've been on these podcasts talking about young parents and talking about traveling and talking about old parents and all kinds of different topics. And so much of what I think comes with experience is exactly what you just said. It's not about going out to do something. It's about who are you with?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about find the free things in the community. There might be an improv comedy group. There might be, right? Wild idea.
Yeah, crazy.
Just pulling out ideas. You could find Ashley online.
I mean, like my friends and I, we have this idea this summer that instead of going out and spending money on comedy shows and all these different like expensive experiences, we're just going to go watch some open mics, watch some poetry readings, because you never know, you might discover the next big person. We're going to have fun this summer and just seeing what the city has to offer.
I love that. So many folks live, doesn't really matter where you live.
Oh yeah.
But you'll hear the old adage. I mean, you're from Jersey. And you'll hear people talk about New York. How many New Yorkers haven't gone to the Statue of Liberty? I've lived in the DMV for a long time, and so many of my friends and peers here have never been to the White House. They've never been to the Capitol building, right? They've driven by it on their way to the airport, but they rarely take the time to go out and actually discover. They don't treat where they live like a tourist. And that is such an opportunity. And, great plug here, but a lot of those things that we mentioned, they're free. You can go tour all of the national monuments or all the national parks. So much you can do out there with kids, with your friends, that you don't have to rack up debt to go and enjoy. So I love that.
My favorite thing actually to do when I visit a new place is instead of looking for things to spend money on, there are certain websites that will show you the weird niche sides of the city. So I looked up one time Washington, D.C., and I got a few results back. It was like go to the monuments, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Been there, done that. But then it was telling me to take a look at the catacombs in D.C. or go to the National Cathedral for a walk. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to see these Franciscan catacombs. I thought those were only in France.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's and I know we're going to be talking about AI for some of the trip planning and, huge opportunities for your finances, for booking vacations. Ashley, let me ask you this. You've been with Navy Federal as an intern for a little bit now. What have you noticed since working here and getting an adult job? How have you noticed Navy Federal showing up for our members, especially those who are just starting out?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I intern with corporate communications. So I actually see a lot of these member stories, and I see through just our storytelling, our Making Sense blog, I see all these different stories of people going out in their community. But what has really stood out to me is that it's not just these kind of digital tools on an app or a website that you just kind of click around on, but there's real people that are behind the tools. I mean, literally the other day, I reached out to you asking to set me up with a financial advisor, and you helped me. And it was a fantastic opportunity, to talk to a real person and have, I'd heard all the things before, but it was nice to hear it from somebody that wasn't like my dad or my grandpa telling me to take a look at it. And this is a lot better. It can get put into very, very simple terms that can get lost usually with someone like my grandpa or my dad,
100%. Messaging is so important, Ashley.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you two things that jump out at me. One, people like to learn different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to have their hands held, and they want to have a conversation. They want to engage in a discussion, and they want to be able to pepper back with questions. And honestly, same.
Yeah,
but
me too.
they're right. But there's others that want to watch a video, read an article, and it's so important to meet people where they're at. I'm gonna even piggyback. I'm gonna take what you just said a step further, because you've been hearing it from your father and your grandfather for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do a school partnership here, and I think I told you a little bit about this off air, but we do a school program here with local high schoolers. And I mentored a girl a couple years ago, and she wanted to work on financial literacy. It was a passion for her. She's doing big things at Virginia Tech now, but at the time she really wanted to teach. And as a junior, she had taught some financial literacy basics to her classmates. Well, she came to us as a senior working on a project, and she said, well, I want to do something. And I said, well, we need to grow. You already presented this material to your classmates. So we found a local college. We put together a presentation. She put together a presentation. We went in and she presented to all of the incoming freshmen in the School of Business.
Yeah.
And hearing it from a peer, instead of getting up and listening to me drone on for 45 minutes about why you should use your student loan discount, look for opportunities to save money, movie theaters are half price on Tuesdays, rotate your streaming services, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the message and the delivery is so important. And I can imagine anyone that's in the under 25 crowd listening to this, they're going to listen to you speak a lot more than they're going to listen to me speak on this. And I'm here for it. I'm just glad we can give you a platform to get some good messaging out to folks.
Well, I actually have a question for you.
Okay, fire away.
Okay. One thing that I hear a lot, especially from my peers, is this feeling of being behind, whether it's behind their friends, behind on social media, behind on some imaginary timeline that they set in their own head. What would you say to someone who feels this way and wants to restart without feeling judged or discouraged?
Yeah, it's funny. Like we said earlier with the social media, we only post our best moments, right?
Yes.
You post that vibe when you're out. How often are you going out and doing that? You post that really cool villa you rented, but in reality, you're staying up the street and you were just using something as a photo op.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of that, you don't necessarily know how much credit card debt did you rack up. You don't know how long is it going to take to pay for some of these things. How many teeth did that experience cost? 4,000 teeth. That is a lot of visits from the Tooth Fairy.
I don't think I have that many.
No, I don't remember the exact count. I'm a liberal arts major, but I'm pretty sure that's more than the average. Maybe if you were a great white shark.
Maybe even then.
Even then. But listen, people are never on the timeline that they want to be. Okay. And it can be with money. It could be with relationships. It could be with weight loss. Like no matter where you are, you're comparing where you want to be with where you are today. And you can't can't let that striving be a thief of how far you've gone up to now. So if you are starting out in a lot of debt and you move the needle and get out of that debt a little bit, that's a win. And you got to keep building on that momentum. If you are just getting married and you're trying to get into home ownership, if you are into home ownership and now you're trying to have a kid, if you have a kid and now you're trying to plan a larger family, it's always something that you're building towards. But that consistency, that automation, that awareness, the fact that you're asking the question, I genuinely hope, give yourself some grace, be positive with yourself, make smart decisions, stack the small wins. And pretty soon you're going to look back and be like, oh my goodness, I remember when my goal was to be where I am today. And that is so important to recognize that all of these things, they're all a lengthy journey. And make sure you enjoy the trip, not just the destination.
Definitely. And I heard one time, it was years ago, I heard just once, comparison is the thief of joy.
I think that's the quote I was looking for, and I couldn't turn it over in my head. But I love that. You're definitely closer to school than I am.
But I mean, that's what goes through my head every time I start to compare my finances. Or am I behind on grocery shopping? Should I be, getting better groceries instead of some of the junk food and stuff like that? So I'm familiar with that. I think about it quite often. And just last question, for someone who's listening today who wants to build better habits, what's one action that they can take right now?
I give this piece of advice every time I'm asked. If you don't know your numbers today, if you don't know where you're starting, all of the planning in the world isn't going to make a difference. So you need to sit down, pen and paper, Making Sense, Navy Federal Tools, talk to a financial counselor, talk to your father and your grandfather, whatever it is. Sit down. What are my income? What are my responsibilities? What are my obligations? Where do I want to go? But you need to list your bills out, find where you can save money. Do you need to make more? Do you need to spend less? There's a lot of variables, but clarity is the first step towards building confidence for your finances. And remember that thank you. I've done this once or twice. The confidence with money isn't about perfection, right? And Ashley, if I could give you one piece of advice that you take with you, it's stack your habits, get some clarity. And I would tell you to make sure that you have the right support, but it sounds like you already have that in place. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your perspective today. It's really helpful for our listeners. And I'm really interested to hear from someone that's in a different stage of life. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, Thomas. I'm rooting for everyone that's listening. You guys have got this.
Navy Federal Credit Union is federally insured by the National Credit Union Administration. This podcast is intended to provide general information and shouldn't be considered legal, tax, or financial advice. It's always a good idea to consult a tax or financial professional for specific information on how certain laws may apply to your individual financial situation. References to and participation with the military community does not constitute organizational endorsement. Navy Federal is an equal housing lender. Navy Federal Credit Union are members of the mission.